Hello, tubers. This is Flat Jordan coming to you from the undoubted flat fields of the grain ghetto in Illinois. I'm only about 80 pages into writing a fiction story based on flat Earth with the intention to ingeniously incorporate every single alternative view urban legend that is currently circulating because my particular skill is in synthesis of meta-analysis. It'll be fun and I hope a bit shocking when you find my explanations for what might be going on. Just what is going on? How the hell should I know? What do I know? That you can't stick water to loose rock resting on a ball of metal hotter than that marshmallow that's falling off your campfire stick. I'm glad you didn't use an oleander bush for your twig choice. Since I still have the same software that I use to make all of my slideshows, I can't embed other people's videos to show liquefaction of ground and mountainsides. That would be neat, but you will just have to find your own mudslide videos to get a sense that if a fucking mountain can just give way because it fucking feels like it, that if you were to do a tilt-a-whirl with mud and brine, that it would get messy really fast for a really short time. The fucking trolls will be all over this like stink on shit and will argue that the rotor ride in carnivals uses centrifugal force and that's what keeps you on the inside of the wall. But the mud and brine is on the outside of the wall called Earth and is like the mud on a tire that is shed by centrifugal force quicker than your prom date's dress. So put the kids and granny on the outside of a rotor ride and let's see how long they stay stuck to the surface by the troll's counter argument that the centripetal force on the surface of the Earth, due to its rotation, balances the outward thrusting centrifugal forces. Most writers make centripetal force synonymous with the ever-elusive gravity. Within the occulting use of word games, the device called a centrifuge is said to use centripetal force to separate the materials in the test tube. So why the fuck didn't they call it a centripetuge? Did you know that they call centrifugal force, you know, that thing that we all know kicks the mud and stones onto our windshield that we just had replaced last week, to be a, quote, fictitious or, quote, pseudo or, quote, inertial force? Opposite day. So what we observe and what we know to be real is already explained away by the alchemist Isaac Newton, with probably elegant mathematics just like the religion of quantum mechanics, where everything can be explained and proven on a blackboard, but lack all practical demonstration. Since I'm poorer than shit, why doesn't somebody else get some crowdfunding to build a modestly big vacuum chamber, get a really fucking powerful electromagnet attached to an axle, put a concrete shell around it, slather on some mud, and pour water all over the globe before turning on the vacuum, and spin the motherfucker as fast as you can with the electric drill, and get it going as soon as the vomit comet creates 0G. Now that would be an experiment, kids. We will ignore the orbital velocity and the translational velocity as the Earth supposedly follows the ass end of the sun as it gets sucked into the black holes in the Cygnus constellation, if you can only demonstrate the rotation without resultant mud stains and cracks on the vacuum chamber glass from the model suffering catastrophic destruction. Notice I didn't mention the water, since that would have boiled off before the hand drill even got up to speed. This test couldn't be done on the ground in the reference frame of gravity, so I would expect this test to be done in vacuum in, well, space shuttle cargo bay or in an evacuated airlock of the ISS, if either of those vehicles even exist, or those shysters had any integrity to do such an experiment. But I'm sure as soon as my video posts that NASA will put their best CGI boys on faking it in the next broadcast, so no one will test it in zero-G unless that crowdfunding can get you a seat on the Vomit Comet. Hey, I've got an open mind. Like I said, I don't know the nature of the universe, so if someone can demonstrate anything with real-life applications without a chalkboard, then I'll consider it. I had an open mind about vaccines until the last one nearly goddamn killed me. But the picture that you have been staring at all this time is the focus of this video. Marvels and Mysteries of the World Around Us was put out by Reader's Digest in 1972. When I looked at it again as an adult, and having been exposed to a cosmological postulate that was not the standard force-fed nonsense from school, then it just didn't make sense. I already know that the trolls are going to ejaculate on themselves, trying to force their mathematics on us to prove what they were hypnotized to repeat, but I don't care. Physics without mathematics. It's possible. Allow me to digress to explain what is going on with the dialectic of flat Earth versus hypnotic indoctrination. It is a dialectic, so there are only two arguments allowed to be insulted against. I didn't say debate because that doesn't exist. If you deconstruct the entire scope of globe Earth tyrants, their entire modus operandi is exactly that as found in the Quran. All infidels must convert or die. Seriously, there are posts all over the net that call for the death of individuals or mass extermination for anyone who even considers a thought outside of the party line. Some call for all flat earthers to be put in a rocket and sent to their doom in outer space. Of course, since flat earthers accept that conspiracy is not a bad word because it is the basis for a claim in criminal law, it would be poetic to accept a trip into fictitious space only to have the flight destroyed on purpose by global jihadists before it ever got to its fictitious destination. So, convert or we will kill you is the sentiment of the day. Just like in They Live, the message of no independent thought abounds. Heresy means free thinker. The Catholics used to murder heretics in inventive and heinously cruel ways for free thinking. So we can see that our globe gobblers mimic Islam and Christianity. Only one Abrahamic religion to go for the trifecta. Do you really want me to do this just for the symmetry of it? Protocol 9, 8 through 10. Who is going to verify what is taught in the village schools? But what an envoy of the government or a king on its throne himself may say cannot but become immediately known to the whole state, for it will be spread abroad by the voice of the people. In order to annihilate the institutions of the Goyim before its time, we have touched them with craft and delicacy, and have taken hold of the ends of the springs which move their mechanism. These springs lay in a strict but just sense of order. We have replaced them by the chaotic license of liberalism. We have got our hands into the administration of the law, into the conduct of elections, into the press, into liberty of the person, but principally into education and training as being the cornerstones of a free existence. We have fooled, bemused, and corrupted the youth of the Goyim by rearing them in principles and theories which are known to us to be false, although it is that they have been inculcated. So we have all three clans of Noah in on the deception and destruction of mankind. But what do we see in the picture? Some things I cannot explain and seriously doubt that anyone else can. The measurements are in miles and the temperatures are in degrees Fahrenheit. It appears that the average temperature at ground level is about 59 degrees Fahrenheit and decreases as you pass 8 miles above the ground, where the temperature drops to negative 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Why? The closer you get to 25 miles up, it gets warmer to the tune of only negative 47 degrees Fahrenheit. There is another thermal layer between what might be 30 to 50 miles up where there is a balmy 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Why? Why these radical shifts in temperature, and why are those thermal layers present? Explanations in words, not math. The ozone layer is represented at 50 miles up with the noctilucent clouds that people now attribute to a firmament above the ozone and D layer levels. This is where the continuity department for flat earth denominations breaks down. Some will say that you can't get a rocket above 73 miles, while others acknowledge that a balloon lofted satellite can be 100 miles high. There is a point where I welcome alternative theories and wild speculation just to cut through the tyranny of shit that we've been force-fed. But there's another point where you have to say, enough speculation, tell me something when you actually know something. And what do you know? This 1972 head trip shows us that there is another thermal layer above 50 miles where the temperature is negative 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Why? How? This is where the shit liquefies and starts to squish between our toes. First, based on atmospheric chemistry, how do these thermal layers organize? In the absence of conductive properties of non-existent atmosphere, how the hell do you measure, quote, air temperature if there is no fucking air? But it gets better. Around 60 miles, it starts to warm up again. By the time you have embedded your rocket in what has been labeled as the lower limit of the firmament, or just liquid nitrogen, at 73 miles up, the temperature is supposed to be plus 324 degrees Fahrenheit. Because the internet allows for instantaneous comparison of material, notice I carefully did not say fact checking. How does this post-boiling temperature track with the videos of rockets that seemed to have embedded in an etheric field that showed an altitude of 48 miles with a temp of negative 369? That we might have to presume is Fahrenheit because there was no scale on the readout. That's a difference of 693 degrees. Degrees? My precious. How can that be explained? By the time you get 100 miles up, the quote temperature is listed as 1,146 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's get some perspective here. Aluminum starts to melt at 1,220 degrees Fahrenheit. By the time we get close to 180 miles, that is the zone for things like low Earth orbit psyops like the space station. The temperature is listed as 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit. Gold melts at 1,945 degrees Fahrenheit. So at the very least, Mylar and its gold leaf should have been sweating off anything covered in lem crinkled foil. Mylar itself has a useful range of up to 392 degrees. And depending on what is exposed or is subject to radiational or conductive heating, the traces in computer circuits should have turned into scrap by the time low Earth orbit was achieved. So we are back to the question of how you measure temperature in low Earth orbit. Titanium has a melting point of 3,272 degrees Fahrenheit, unless you get your ingots from Rothschild. Our ancient chart that apparently hasn't been Nelson Mandela affected goes only to 350 miles up, where the temperature increases to 2,256 degrees Fahrenheit. They list that as the height of Explorer 1 satellite. To indulge those who say that the sun is not an impossible 93 million miles away, these temps in low Earth orbit seem to indicate there is a heat source fairly close by. Regardless of what people believe or contend, the question remains unanswered as to how empty space with no atmosphere for conduction could be measured at the temp that you could almost boil calcium. Don't look to me for answers. That's what the other side is responsible for.